NTA International News.
President Buhari described the two points of impact in the U.S. joins Africa to unite in the fight against Ebola. Nigeria gets more global attention. Vice President Sibajo receives Chinese and French envoys. Plus, Speaker House of Representatives and French government work out authorities to contain insurgency. Thanks for joining us on NTA International. Now to take a look at these and other news items. Madam Izobechi Paul. Nigeria has pledged to work closely with the African Union and the international community towards ensuring lasting peace in South Sudan. President Muhammadu Buhari stated this at an audience with the United Nations High Representative for South Sudan, Alpha Umar Konare, at the presidential villa. State House correspondent Adam Sambo reports. We hope to bring you this story in the course of the bulletin. President Muhammadu Buhari has described as untrue claims in the local and international media that he accused or indicted the United States government of helping the terrorist group Boko Haram. It has sent in Abuja by the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Femi Adesina. The president said the claim is an unfortunate misinterpretation and distortion of his remarks at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Statement indicates that President Buhari was convinced that the U.S. could never support groups such as Boko Haram. The regrets expressed by the president about the impact of the application of leading law on Nigerians' war against Boko Haram and terrorism cannot be construed as an indictment of President Obama. The president expects that the faithful talks he had with the U.S. counterpart will lead to a better mutual understanding and further deepening of bilateral relations between Nigeria and United States in the areas of defense and security cooperation. In the spirit of Africa Country helping Africans in the recovery and reconstruction of countries affected by Ebola epidemic, President Muhammadu Buhari has announced the donation of $1 million to the cause. President Buhari was represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Health, Mr. Linus Awute. Mr. Awute made the donation at the International Conference on Africa's Fight Against Ebola in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. While sharing Nigeria's experience in rapidly containing Ebola, he pointed out that the country is not celebrating the end of Ebola in Nigeria until the disease is totally eliminated from the continent. Hence the nation's commitment to support all efforts by the African nation in the fight.
Technical aid policy in consultation with the aid commission to deploy health professionals to reactivate essential health services. The Nigerian Epidemiological and Laboratory Training Program will provide the required training for the available health professionals from the three countries of Guinea, Liberia, and Syria.
The Permanent Secretary disclosed that Nigeria is supporting research efforts in developing therapies and vaccines against the disease, as well as establishment of the Africa Center for Disease Control. With high integrity, transparency and commitment to good governance by its leadership, Nigeria continues to receive attention globally, while the willingness to support the country to succeed in its transformation thickens. This time it was the turn of China and France pledging to further support and strengthen their bilateral relations with Nigeria when the envoys of both countries visited Vice President Professor Yemi Sibajo. State House correspondent Jide Olufade reports.
Agriculture and trade. The two also exchange views on maintaining peace and stability in both countries. The ambassador expresses the willingness of the Chinese government
to continue to work with Nigeria. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo assured the ambassador that the administration is open to genuine friendship that will move the nation forward politically and economically. The Chinese ambassador to Nigeria described the meeting as fruitful.
We have reached widest agreements on further development of our relations. We agree that China and Nigeria, being the biggest country in each region, we have a lot to do. Together we could do a lot to make an impact on the China-Nigeria relation and on China and Africa relation. We can make an influence and impact on the region and on developing world.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo also granted audience to the ambassador of France to Nigeria, Mr. Denis Gawa. The ambassador says France, as one of the leading trade partners with Nigeria, will continue to offer support on the fight against insurgents to bring about peace and stability in Nigeria and African countries.
We plan also in autumn several economical visits to Nigeria, especially visits of French companies and of the head of the French business organization. So we have very good prospects.
From the State House, Jide Onifade, NTA News.
The House of Representatives and the French government are working out modalities to reinforce their partnership in the fight against insurgency in Nigeria. This is part of the agreement reached at a meeting between Speaker Yakubu Dogara and the French ambassador to Nigeria, Denis Gawa. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Onko reports.
The Nigerian government visited France to seek assistance in the fight against Boko Haram. That saw the emergence of the multinational military force against insurgents. With renewed attacks from this group, Speaker Yakubu Dogara says there is urgent need to intensify international military action against insurgents. He described as unfortunate the allegation by Amnesty International that the Nigerian military was involved in human rights abuses.
We also want to thank you for the role you are playing in the cooperation you've given us in the fight to combat terrorism. But in this area, let me say that what bothers most of us here, believing me as a person, is the fact that some Western countries are holding on to support based on concerns they have raised on human rights. And so in most cases, we wonder, what human rights are we talking about? Is it the rights of the terrorists who murder people on a daily basis, the rights of the terrorists who are holding on to more than 200 of our daughters in captivity for months without aid? And you know, France has a very deep-rooted relationship with these francophone nations in Africa.
Speaker Dogara also called on the French business community to extend its investment to other untapped sectors of the Nigerian economy.
But we have vast potentials for tourism, the power sector, which I sincerely believe must precede any economic revolution in this country.
Now in the economical field, Nigeria is already the first trading partner for France in Africa.
While calling for parliamentary friendship with the French Parliament, the Speaker assured the French delegation that the 8th House of Representatives will revisit all relevant bills left behind by the 7th House of Representatives. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Onko, NTA News.
Former Governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Okayode Fayemi, says for Africa to make progress, Pan-African intellectualism must be revived. He was speaking at the 4th annual John Attamills Memorial Lecture in Accra, Ghana, where he noted that the current democratic deficit in Africa cannot be solved as long as intellect is used as a counterpunch in politics. Kodino Koma reports.
Dr. Okayode Fayemi's lecture had as its theme Intellectuals in Politics and Governance, Lessons and Legacy of Professor John Evans Attamills. The lecturer, who gave a historical overview of Pan-African leaders from the pre-independent Africa, posited that Africa requires more than ever before enlightened and thoughtful politicians with character and integrity who are not only bold but broad-minded enough to consider things beyond their scope of their immediate influence and benefits. In his words, Africa needs politicians who are willing and able to rise above their own power interests and interests of their parties and states.
Intellectuals should make their presence felt in many ways. They could, without finding it shameful or demeaning, accept political efforts and use that position to do what they deem right.
He has put things in the right context. He has brought to us fond memories of a great leader.
The lecture is a very optimistic one for, we politicians. Professor John Evans Atamus, President of Ghana, died in office on the 24th of July 2012. The memorial lecture, attended by the Vice President of Ghana, ministers and top politicians, was jointly organized by the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration (GIMPA) and the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Dr. Fayemi is the first known Ghanaian to deliver the annual lecture. From GIMPA, West Legon, Accra, Ghana, Cordelia Obama, NTA News.
Watching the news on NTA International from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja. We told you earlier that President Buhari described as untrue claims in the local and international media that he accused the indicted the US of aiding the terrorist group Boko Haram. You also heard that Vice President Yemi Osibajo has received the Chinese and French envoys who have pledged to further strengthen bilateral relations with Nigeria. More news coming up with the break. Stay tuned with NTA International.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you chance takes a risk.
It continues now a revisit of the story on Buhari and peace in South Sudan. Nigeria has pledged to work closely with the African Union and international community towards ensuring lasting peace in South Sudan. President Muhammadu Buhari stated this at an audience with the United Nations High Representative for South Sudan, Alpha Umar Konare, at the Presidential Villa. State House correspondent Adamus Hambo reports.
President Muhammadu Buhari emphasized the need for the government of South Sudan and the political factions in the country to start implementing the various peace agreements reached under the auspices of the United Nations, the African Union, as well as the Intergovernmental Authority on Development in Eastern Africa. He said compliance with the agreements by all parties to the dispute in South Sudan is an essential step towards returning the country to the path of peace, stability and development. The United Nations representative Alpha Umar Konare had told President Buhari that violence is continuing in South Sudan in spite of the several peace agreements. He warned that the situation could deteriorate further if left unresolved, and the humanitarian crisis may also be worsened with negative consequences for neighboring countries. President Buhari also granted audience to the coordinator, Honorary International Investors Council, Baroness Linda Choka. He assured her that Nigeria welcomes useful suggestions from local and international entrepreneurs on ways of accelerating the pace of economic development in the country. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
Now away from diplomacy, President Muhammadu Buhari says his administration is set to work with a body of journalists that is ready to partner with government for the overall interests of the nation. He extended this humble fellowship in a message to the opening of the NTA International National Delegates Conference in Abuja. Correspondent Anthony Forson reports.
President Muhammadu Buhari's message was delivered by his special advisor on media and publicity, Femi Adesina. He said government will ensure that press freedom is guaranteed, while practitioners on their part must exhibit a high sense of patriotism.
If our democracy will grow, there must be freedom of information to promote transparency and accountability in government. The era in which government and the media are adversaries should be conclusively over. In this era, we don't need that again, rather we should be partners. That does not mean that the media cannot be critical of government. They can and they should when necessary.
Senate President Bukola Saraki was represented by Senator Sani and the Speaker, House of Representatives Yakubu Dogara, all called for a synergy between the media and government.
We cannot underestimate the importance of the media in the art of governance. The roles they have, although secondary in nature, are primary and central placed in national, regional, and local affairs. We will need to work together to deepen democracy. In the Youth Assembly, as part of our legislative agenda, we will work with you as a group and as individuals to put together the legislations that will enhance the value of journalism as a profession, to improve the quality of life for the journalist and protect the journalist and his family. The Nigerian people in return expect the media and journalists to give them truthful, balanced, and verifiable reportage.
Permanent Secretary Federal Minister of Information, Dr. Folashade Yemi-Eson, and her counterpart in the Federal Capital Territory all eulogized Nigerian journalists, describing them as a great asset to the nation. For Mohammed Garba, whose reign as President of the Union is coming to an end, he was full of gratitude, saying, under his tenure, the Freedom of Information Bill was passed. The NTA now has an insurance scheme for its members and has secured a permanent secretariat. Of worthy of note is the accreditation it got for the International Institute of Journalism. The 5th Triennial National Delegates Conference has as its theme fostering safety of journalists and building synergy with agents of the state. In Abuja, Anthony Forson, NTA News.
Former Federal Commissioner for Information Edwin Clark wants the Nigerian government to make any appointment to replace the former chairman and vice-chair to the president on Niger Delta Affairs, Kingsley Kuku, to avoid collapse of the amnesty program. It was at a media conference in Abuja. Ifeanyi Zumba reports.
Chief Clark is concerned with series of demonstrations by youths and mothers in the region who wants to be engaged meaningfully for national development.
The place has been left without anybody directing the affairs. 13 pilot students in Germany, Lufthansa, they were asked to go. So, that is the reason why I'm appealing. I understand they have 5.3 billion naira in that program. But who to sign the papers, who to operate the accounts, is why these students are not being paid.
While appealing to the youths to remain calm and disassociate themselves from anything that would derail the good intention of government and well-meaning Nigerians, he pleaded with the administration to keep the peace of the region and retool the economy. Ifeanyi Zumba, NTA News.
With an ongoing effort towards the adoption of genetically modified technology in Nigeria, the federal government has directed that producers, suppliers and marketers of the genetically modified crops should adhere strictly to the biosafety laws. Musa Babali reports that the directive is to ensure safety of the consumer and the environment.
With the environmental challenges associated with soil infertility affecting food production, coupled with increased food demand and overpopulation, developing nations are adopting genetically modified technology for their food production policy to meet the demand of the populace. Towards meeting this need, countries are expected to put in place biosafety rules and regulations that will guarantee safety of both the consumer and the environment. Nigeria is in the process of adopting the technology in her national food production with the establishment of National Biosafety Management Agency. The agency is to ensure adherence to international best practices in the production, supply and marketing of all kinds of genetically modified crops and its products.
Nigeria is already consuming genetically modified organisms unofficially. We are going to carry out a survey and ensure that all these are properly identified, documented, and all the necessary assessment will be carried out to ensure that these products are suitable for Nigerian consumption and to the environment.
Agriculturalists are of the opinion that for Nigeria to benefit from the technology, a sensitization and awareness campaign must be intensified on the safety of the system.
The enabling environment for our scientists to practice must be provided.
Apart from Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya and Burkina Faso, among others, are adopting the technology for their food production. In Abuja, Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
Corner now, Nigeria government collaborates with stakeholders for the implementation of micro-reforms in the agricultural sector. Plus, uncovered 3,000 ghost police pensioners, saves 1.2 billion naira annually for the government. And metal prices record all-time low in the global market. Details with Chukwunonso more.
The Nigerian government, through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, is partnering with the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa and Nigeria Agribusiness Group to implement some micro-reforms in the country's agricultural sector. Under the initiative, a platform will be created for agro-entrepreneurs in seeds and fertilizers to thrive in Nigeria.
We must now have a complete perception, a new perception of agriculture, call it agribusiness, starting from seed to table. So right now, what you've just mentioned is part of the value chain.
Meanwhile, the Pension Transition Arrangements Directorate has cleared that 3,000 ghost police pensioners uncovered at the just concluded verification exercise saved about 100 million naira monthly for the federal government. Director General of the Directorate, Nelly Meshach, says out of the 18,000 police pensioners shortlisted for the verification, only 15,000 were successful, saving 1.2 billion naira annually for the country. And metal prices hit all-time year low on Friday after weaker than expected data from China and Eurozone raised concerns about global growth. London copper fell to its lowest level since 2009, while the flash market China Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) dropped to 48.2%, below economic growth forecast of 49.7%. On the other hand, the US dollar recorded a 0.3% rise against other currencies after a Federal Reserve rate hike. Chukwunonso, NTA News.
Statistics released by the National Blindness and Low Vision Survey indicates that the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, has the highest prevalence of blindness within the north-central zone of the country, a situation that has necessitated a collaboration between agencies and the FCT administration to address the problem. Anthony Forson reports.
The program tagged Seeing is Believing is being driven by the Federal Capital Territory and Brain-Holding Vision Institute. Between 2011 and 2015, eye care projects ranging from building capacities to help raise manpower to tackle the problem were pursued with vigor, while healthcare facilities were also strengthened.
Having felt the immense positive impact of this project, the FCTA is wholly committed to the sustenance of eye care services through adequate funding,
including a whole laboratory to make glasses for people, provision of a standard theater, and even training of my staff.
Members of the Brain-Holding Vision Institute speak.
The population is to be served, but if we work alone, we will not ensure sustainability that way. So together, we can travel much further in the fight. Together, we can do much more.
From the basic eye care needs to even the surgical care.
Over 500,000 children and adults have benefited from the program. In Abuja, Anthony Forson, NTA News.
For just first malaria vaccine given green light by European regulators, and Obama makes landmark visits to Kenya and the African Union headquarters. These and more with Uche Mwizu.
The world's first malaria vaccine has been approved by European regulators. The vaccine, which has taken 30 years to develop, could protect millions of children in sub-Saharan Africa from the life-threatening disease. The European Medicine Agency recommended masquerade should be licensed for use in young children in Africa who are at risk of the mosquito-borne disease. The World Health Organization guidance on how and where it should be used will be released before the end of the year. The U.S. President Barack Obama made a landmark visit to his ancestral home of Kenya, his first as a president. His visit also included a stop in Ethiopia, home of the African Union. This is the first time a sitting U.S. president will visit the African Union's headquarters in Addis Ababa. President Obama is expected to address regional security issues and trade, matters relating to democracy, poverty and human rights in the region. And in Burundi, authorities are expected to announce results of the controversial presidential elections Friday, with President Pierre Nkurunziza leading in the contested third consecutive term. Meanwhile, the U.S. ambassador to Burundi said U.S. will review its relations and level of aid to Burundi over the next 2 months, after the Central African nation held a disputed presidential elections earlier this week. The announcement came after Washington criticized Tuesday's boycotted presidential polls and called for mediation process. Uche Wizu, NTA News.
Falconets of Nigeria set for double victory against Liberia in Saturday's FIFA 2016 Women's World Cup qualifier in Abuja, as Nigeria Judo Federation concludes trials ahead of the 2015 All-Africa Games. Ayodeji Makinde has more on sports update.
Nigeria Under-20 women's team, the Falconets, will Saturday take on Liberia at the Abuja National Stadium in the first round second leg qualifier of the 2016 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup to be hosted by Papua New Guinea. The Peter Dedewoko's team won the reverse fixture 7-1 a fortnight ago in Liberia. Meanwhile, the Director General of the National Sports Commission, Al-Hassan Yakub, says Nigeria may have to go in for all the weight categories in the judo event of the 2015 All-Africa Games in Congo-Brazzaville, going by the quality of the final trials of the Judo Federation Thursday in Abuja. More than 14 athletes have already been listed to participate in the Federation's final campaign, billed to commence Monday in Ibadan.
Less than 30 days after we brought the family together, it has started yielding dividends. And I see judo being on the podium in Congo-Brazzaville.
Imo State government has assured athletes in the state of appropriate attention by exposing them to national and global sports. This was disclosed by the state's Deputy Governor, Prince Eze Madumere, at the just concluded 2015 edition of the Prince Madumere Athletics Championship, held at the Dan Anyam Stadium, Owerri.
We are rising one of the greatest aspirations towards contributing in the cause of women affairs. And I'm happy for such a partnership.
Correspondent Nkiru Oyejese reports that athletes who excelled in various events of the championship, namely long jump, high jump, 400 and 800 meters, received prizes. With sport update, Ayodeji Makinde, NTA News.
Now let's take a look at Saturday's weather prospect in Nigeria and some worldwide cities in our weather update. That's it.